I was staring at the microphone like it might bite me. The wedding hall had fallen completely silent. Every eye turned toward me, waiting. Or maybe bracing. Across the aisle, my cousin Amanda was clutching her bouquet like a lifeline. Her eyes warned me not to do it. Her mother, my Aunt Denise, stood behind her with that same smirk she always wore when she thought she'd won. "She won't say anything," Aunt Denise had told Amanda the night before, not knowing I was behind the door. "She's too scared to make a scene." She always was. Maybe they were right once. Maybe for 25 years, I had let them define me. The quiet girl. The doormat. The one who took it all in silence. But not that day. Because that day, I stood up. That day, I spoke. Have you ever been pushed to the edge by the people who should have protected you? Comment, "I've felt this," if you've ever had to choose truth over keeping the peace. My name is Natalie Evans, and for most of my life, I was the quiet cousin. The background character in a family full of mainstage performers. You know the type. Loud laughs, louder opinions, always dressed like the world was watching. I was the one who people asked to move out of the photo so just the immediate family could take one without the extras. I grew up in Bloomfield, Indiana, population 2,400. My mom, Carol, was the youngest of 3 sisters. The other 2 were Denise and Margaret, but Denise was the center of the universe. She had the perfect marriage, the best house on Willow Street, and her daughter Amanda. Well, Amanda was our family's version of royalty. I remember the first time Amanda made me feel invisible. We were both 9. It was Thanksgiving at Aunt Denise's house, and I had spent the whole week crafting a paper turkey for the family table centerpiece. It had feathers made from real leaves I'd pressed and laminated. When I arrived holding it proudly, Amanda looked at it, scrunched her nose, and said, "That looks like trash." Aunt Denise chuckled and gently took it from my hands. "We'll put it somewhere special," she said, and then I saw her toss it into the garage when she thought I wasn't looking. I never told my mom. I never said a word. I just swallowed that moment, like so many others. The thing is, I didn't have a bad childhood. Not really. My mom loved me fiercely, and my dad, Greg, was a quiet, kind man who played jazz records on Sunday mornings. But we lived paycheck to paycheck, and in our family, money bought respect. And Denise had a lot of it. I was always Carol's girl, and that meant I came second. Maybe third. Denise's kids got invited to the private pool parties. I got asked to babysit. Still, I didn't hate Amanda. There were moments, believe it or not, when I wanted nothing more than to be her friend. I remember once in middle school, she saw me reading in the hallway and sat beside me. "What's that about?" she asked, pointing to To Kill a Mockingbird. I was stunned. Amanda had never really spoken to me at school before. I told her it was about justice, about a man who's falsely accused, and a girl who's trying to understand the world. She nodded, and for a brief second, I thought, maybe we're bridging a gap here. But later that day, I heard her telling her friends I was into sad old books about sad people. They laughed. I didn't say anything. Again, that was the pattern. Amanda would throw little darts. Denise would pretend not to see. And the rest of the family? They just let it happen. But there was one person who always noticed. Uncle Ray, Denise's husband. He wasn't a perfect man, but he had a way of pulling me aside at events and whispering, "You're a smart one. Now don't let the noise drown that out." When I was 14, I wrote a poem for my grandmother's memorial. I spent weeks perfecting it. But on the day of the service, Aunt Denise told me the program was already full. Instead, Amanda sang a shaky version of Amazing Grace, and I sat quietly in the pew, poem folded in my lap like a wound. My mother told me afterward, "There will be other moments. Your time will come." I believed her. For a while. In high school, I joined debate club. It was the first time I felt truly seen. My coach, Mr. Jackson, pushed me to speak up. "Natalie," he said, "your voice doesn't shake when you're telling the truth. That's your power." I started winning competitions. At state finals, I beat a girl who was ranked higher than me and won second place overall. Aunt Denise didn't attend, even though my mom invited the whole family. Speech trophies aren't real achievements, she reportedly said. Now, if she'd been homecoming queen, it was exhausting, trying to earn approval from a woman who only valued appearance and power. Amanda had both in abundance. I had words. And, to them, words didn't matter, unless they came from the right mouth. After high school, I left Bloomfield for University of Michigan, majoring in communications. College changed me. I grew out of my shell, met people who listened when I spoke. I built a little confidence. But home always had a way of dimming my light. When I came back one summer, Amanda had started dating a guy named Chad, clean-cut, rich, the type of man Aunt Denise dreamed Amanda would marry. They got engaged 2 years later. The family buzzed with excitement. "You'll be one of the bridesmaids," Amanda told me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I need someone responsible to hold my phone and the emergency kit." Translation: "You're in the wedding, but not really." I said yes. I always said yes. Until the rehearsal dinner. That night, I heard Aunt Denise in the hallway with Amanda. I'd gone to grab my purse and paused outside the door when I heard my name. "She better not try anything," Denise whispered. "Keep her seated. That one's always been a little jealous. You know how they get." "Don't worry," Amanda said. "She won't speak. She never does." They laughed. I didn't move. But something inside me did. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my hotel room staring at my old debate folder, full of notes and speeches. My hands trembled, but my heart was calm. Not angry. Just done being quiet. The ceremony was the next day. And I had something to say. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't always arrive with screaming or slammed doors. Sometimes, it walks in quietly, dressed as tradition. The weeks leading up to Amanda's wedding felt like a long rehearsal of every time I'd been sidelined. Aunt Denise had organized the events like a Broadway production, and I was cast as responsible cousin number 3. My job? Pack the bridesmaid slippers. Check the playlist. Coordinate the parking for out-of-town guests. No one asked me what I wanted to do. I was just expected to help. The bridesmaids had a group chat. I wasn't added until a week later, and even then, only so they could assign me the vendor contact list. When I messaged something about flower arrangements, Amanda replied, "Can we let the professionals handle that?" "Thanks, Nat." It stung, but I brushed it off. Again. During one of the early fittings, we were at a boutique downtown. Amanda stood on a pedestal in her lace mermaid gown, surrounded by mirrors and praise. I was holding the hem of her train while Denise cooed, "My baby looks like royalty." Amanda turned toward me, smirking. "Nat, are you crying?" "No," I said quickly. "I wasn't, but I think I wanted to." Denise laughed. "She's just overwhelmed. Being part of a real wedding is new for her." There it was. That subtle jab, dipped in sugar. Like always. Later that evening, at the bridal shower, I noticed the seating chart. Amanda had placed me at the kids' table, with 2 teenagers and someone's baby cousin. I scanned the room. All the other bridesmaids sat with Amanda's college friends at the head table. I pulled her aside gently. "Hey, I think there might have been a mix-up with the seating." She didn't even blink. "Oh no, I did that on purpose. I figured you'd be good with the younger ones. You always keep things calm." That was her version of a compliment.
Stay calm.
Stay small.
And I did.
At least for a little longer. My mom, Carol, noticed my unease. After the shower, she pulled me into the kitchen of my aunt's house, where she was helping clean up. "You okay, honey?" I forced a smile. "Just tired."
But she didn't buy it.
"You know," she said, wiping a wine glass, "just because people hand you crumbs doesn't mean you have to act like it's a feast." I looked at her. "You ever regret not standing up to them?"
Carol sighed.
"Every day since 1989. That was the year Denise married into money. Everything changed after that. Carol stopped getting invited to family planning dinners. Her opinions became sweet but simple. She had learned to survive by stepping aside. I realized then that I had inherited that same silence. But I was starting to choke on it. 1 week before the wedding, Amanda held a final planning dinner at a restaurant downtown. Everyone came dressed in florals, laughing over cocktails. I had offered to make the playlist for the evening. Spent hours curating songs from Amanda's childhood, ones I remembered her dancing to in our grandparents' backyard. But when the music started, I realized none of my tracks had been used. Instead, it was all top 40 hits from TikTok and Spotify. I leaned over to Rachel, one of Amanda's college friends. I think they used the wrong file. I had uploaded the full mix. She smiled politely. Oh, Amanda said your stuff was kind of outdated. There it was again. The little needle in the ribs. Later that night, while Amanda opened gifts, she read aloud each card and gave a dramatic thank you. When she reached mine, a personalized photo album with scans of our childhood photos and handwritten notes, she didn't even look at it. Oh, this one's from Nat, she said casually. That's cute. She set it aside like a used napkin. It was public enough that a few people glanced toward me with awkward sympathy. I smiled, nodded, drank water, even though my throat was dry. Then came the rehearsal. Aunt Denise made sure every detail of the ceremony was micromanaged. She had walkie-talkies, a clipboard, backup plans for the backup plans. And then she said it, as she was assigning seating. Oh, and Natalie, don't worry about the speech. We won't need you to say anything. I blinked.
Speech.
She looked up. You know, the toast? Amanda said you'd prepared something, but it might be better to keep things flowing smoothly. You can save it for the scrapbook. The scrapbook? Amanda added. Yeah, it's nothing personal. We just want to avoid too many speeches. Chad's brothers are already speaking, and they're hilarious. So, I wasn't funny.
Got it.
That night, my mom knocked on my hotel room door with a slice of pie and a look that only mothers have when they know something's broken inside their child. You don't have to take this, she said simply. I swallowed a forkful of cherry and said, if I say something, I ruin her day. If I don't, I ruin myself.
Carol sat with that.
Maybe it's not her day that needs ruining. Maybe it's the narrative. What do you mean? You were taught that speaking up makes you the villain. But sometimes, silence is what lets villains grow. It hit me harder than I expected. For 25 years, I had let them write my story. Denise, with her control. Amanda, with her coldness. Even the rest of the family, with their indifference. And I had allowed it because I didn't want to be called bitter, dramatic, ungrateful. But maybe being silent was the most bitter thing of all. A few days before the wedding, I was in my room when I found an old folder from my debate days. Tucked inside was a quote I had underlined in high school. Speak, even if your voice shakes. Especially then. My hands trembled as I pulled out a blank page. And I started writing. The morning of the wedding felt unreal. The air smelled of lilacs and hairspray, the bridal suite humming with curling irons and excited squeals. Amanda looked like something out of a bridal magazine, ivory silk clinging to her like it had been stitched by angels. But all I could think about was the speech folded in my purse. Words I'd written like they were pulled from my ribs. As the other bridesmaids took selfies, Amanda sat in front of the mirror, touching up her lip gloss. Without looking up, she said, You didn't try too hard with your dress, did you, Nat? I blinked. What? She glanced at my soft rose gown. Just don't want anyone distracting from the bride, you know? I swallowed the familiar sting. Of course. She turned back to her reflection. You're good at that. Not making things about you. I nodded. Not today. That line? It slipped out, but it hung in the air like static. Amanda's eyes flicked to mine in the mirror, but she didn't say anything. We walked down the aisle. Cameras clicked. Flowers bloomed in our hands. Amanda glided behind us like royalty. The ceremony was held at the Bellevue Estate, a white-pillared mansion on the edge of town. Sunlight streamed through stained glass as Amanda and Chad exchanged vows. It was perfect, on the outside. But inside me, something was tearing. Then came the reception.
Champagne.
Laughter.
Speeches.
Chad's brothers gave a toast full of frat boy humor and playful jabs. Amanda's college roommate cried through her poem.
People clapped.
Amanda beamed. I was never called up. Aunt Denise glanced at me across the room, then looked away as if I were a smudge on her perfect canvas. That should have been it. I should have accepted my place, once again, in the audience of someone else's life. But fate, fickle as ever, had other plans. It started with the DJ. Halfway through dinner, he came to our table. "Hey, I have a note here. Someone named Natalie Evans is supposed to give a tribute. Got you down before the cake cutting." I froze. Amanda must have overheard. She practically flew across the floor. "There's no tribute," she snapped at the DJ. "That's a mistake." He blinked. "Sorry, this came from the coordinator. Said it was added last minute." Amanda turned to me, voice low but sharp. "Did you do this?" I held her gaze. "You said I couldn't speak. You never asked if I still would." "Natalie, this is my day."
No.
"It's our family's day. And for once, I'd like to be treated like part of it." Denise appeared. "Is there a problem?" Amanda hissed. "She's trying to hijack the reception." Denise looked at me like I was gum on her shoe. "Let's not make this dramatic." I smiled calmly. "I'll be brief." Before anyone could stop me, I stepped up to the mic. The crowd quieted. Forks paused midair. Aunt Denise stood frozen, and Amanda clutched Chad's arm, her knuckles white. I took a breath.
Hi.
Most of you know me as Amanda's cousin. Some of you might not know me at all. That's okay. I've been invisible before. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. I was asked not to speak today. It's happened before: birthdays, memorials, holidays. Somewhere along the way, my voice became inconvenient. I was the quiet one, the good girl, the helper, and I let that be true for a long time. I could see Amanda shaking her head, mouthing, "Stop." I didn't. I remember the first time Amanda called me jealous. I was 9. She tossed away something I made with my hands, and everyone laughed. I remember Denise saying I was too sensitive. I believed her. I believed all of them. The room was still. I continued. "But here's the thing about sensitivity. It means you feel. And today I feel a lot. I feel pride for Amanda, yes, despite everything I do. I feel grief for the family I thought I had. And I feel clarity for the first time in years." I held up the folded speech. I wrote this thinking I'd give a toast. It's not funny. It's not poetic. It's just true. I read one paragraph. "To Amanda, I hope this marriage brings you the love you so easily receive and the patience you've rarely had to show. I hope Chad knows that under the surface, there's a girl who wants control more than connection, and I hope he sees past it. I hope you learn what love feels like when it isn't staged."
Gasps.
Whispers. A wine glass clinked too hard and shattered. Amanda stood, shaking. "You're a damn disaster," she hissed. Denise moved toward me, voice sharp. "Get off that stage." I held the mic tighter. "I'm almost done." The crowd had divided. Some were stone-faced, others nodding. A few even clapped softly. I looked straight at Amanda. "You thought I'd be too scared to speak. But fear only works if silence is the goal. And mine isn't anymore." I turned to the room. "To anyone else who's been asked to sit down when they should have stood, this is your sign. You don't have to stay quiet just to keep the peace." I placed the mic back, walked away. No music played. Just stunned silence. I passed Amanda. Her mascara was smudging. Denise was whispering something furious in her ear. I didn't look back. Outside, the night was cool. My mom met me by the valet. She didn't say anything. She just took my hand. We left the reception early, my mom and I, but the confrontation had only just begun. The next morning, I woke up to a storm. Not of rain, but of calls, voicemails, texts, DMs. A few cousins sent laughing emojis. One wrote, "You finally did it." Another, more bitterly, said, "You ruined her wedding." Amanda didn't text. Denise did. "I hope you're proud of yourself. Your aunt will never forgive this. You made a circus of a sacred day." I stared at the screen for a while before replying.
No, Denise.
"I just finally walked out of your act." 2 days passed in silence. Then came the knock. It was Denise. At my mother's house, wearing her pearls and fake smile like armor. "I'd like to speak with Natalie alone," she said stiffly. I nodded. My mom hesitated, but left the room. We stood in the kitchen, two women bound by blood, separated by decades of buried things. "I suppose you think you're brave," she began. I folded my arms. "I think I'm honest. There's a difference." Denise's lips curled slightly. "You embarrassed yourself. You embarrassed this family." "This family embarrassed me," I snapped. "For years. You think I don't remember how you cut my mother out of decisions? How you treated me like a spare part?" She bristled. "That's not how I remember it."
No.
"You remember everything through a lens where you're always the center. But I remember the facts. Like you laughing when Amanda mocked my handwriting. Like you throwing out my Thanksgiving project. Like you calling me dramatic because I dared to feel." Denise took a deep breath. Amanda was under pressure. Weddings are stressful. "And what about life?" I said, voice rising. "Was it stressful when she told people I was jealous at 15? When she called me the ugly cousin in front of her friends? You stood there every time, Denise. You heard it all. And you never stopped her." She went quiet. "I didn't think it mattered," she said eventually. "I didn't think you minded." That hit like a slap. "You didn't think I minded being humiliated?" Her eyes dropped. "You never said anything." I felt my throat tighten. Because when I did, I was told I was overreacting. Or bitter. Or trying to steal the spotlight. She exhaled slowly. "You've always been sensitive." "No," I corrected. "I've always been awake. I saw everything. And now I'm done pretending I didn't." Silence fell between us. Then I walked to the cabinet, pulled out a photo album. The same one I had made for Amanda. The one she dismissed. I placed it on the table between us. "Open it," I said. She hesitated, then flipped through. A photo of Amanda and me building a snowman when we were 8. A shot of all the cousins in the backyard. A letter I'd written at 12 thanking Amanda for letting me borrow her crayons. "I tried," I whispered. "I really did. To belong. To matter. To be seen." Denise looked at the pages. Slowly, her hand trembled. "I didn't know," she said softly. "You didn't want to know," I replied. "Because if you did, you'd have to treat me differently. You'd have to admit you were wrong." Tears welled in her eyes. But I didn't comfort her. I didn't rush to fix her feelings like I always used to. Instead, I said what I had carried for years. "You taught Amanda that power was more important than kindness. That image was more valuable than truth. You let her become the kind of woman who doesn't recognize love unless it wears labels and costs money. You created her." Denise sat down, hard. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "I believe that," I said. "But meaning doesn't undo damage." We sat in silence. Then I did something symbolic.
Something for me.
I reached into a drawer and pulled out an old family photo. The last Thanksgiving before my grandfather died. Everyone was smiling. I was off to the side, almost cropped out. I ripped it in half. Not out of rage, but out of clarity. Denise flinched. "I'm done living in the edges of this family," I said. "If I'm not in the frame, I won't be in the room." She nodded slowly. "What do you want from me?" I looked her in the eye. "Nothing. This isn't about you anymore. It's about me finally choosing myself." She stood, straightened her coat, opened her mouth to speak, then thought better of it. She walked out. My mom came in a few minutes later. "Well, I think we're done," I said. "For now." She nodded, then reached over and placed something in my hand. It was a folded paper, one I hadn't seen in years. "You remember this?" she asked. I opened it. A note I'd written at 11 years old. "One day I'll say it. All of it. And they won't be able to shut me up." I smiled through tears. "They never could," she said. The days after Denise's visit were quiet, but not the heavy kind of quiet I was used to. This was different. Like the silence that settles after a long, cleansing storm. I didn't hear from Amanda. Not directly. I heard from others, of course. Cousins, family, friends. Even my Uncle Rick, who called to check in and casually mention how things could have been handled more discreetly.
Discreetly.
That word had followed me my whole life, like a shadow. Be discreet. Be polite. Be agreeable. Translation: be invisible. I was done with invisible. Amanda finally posted on social media 5 days later. A carousel of wedding photos, captioned with a quote that reeked of passive aggression. Some people try to steal our joy, but love always wins. I stared at it, dry-eyed. I didn't feel anger. I felt distance. Like watching a movie where I used to be a character, but no longer had a role. People commented heart emojis. A few tagged me in the post, either as a jab or a show of support, I couldn't tell. I didn't respond. I had learned something powerful. Not every fire needs your breath to keep burning. I focused on healing. Not dramatic, sweeping healing, but small things. I took walks. I cleaned out drawers. I deleted old photos, not in rage, but in release. I made a playlist of songs I used to love before I made myself small to fit in with them. And then, one night, I found it. Tucked in a folder in my closet, buried under old journals, was a speech. The one I never gave at Amanda's high school graduation party. I was 18. I had been asked to say a few words. I wrote them with trembling hands. But Denise read it first. "It's too much," she said. "Just say something short and sweet. Let Amanda shine." So I folded it away and let it rot in silence. Now I opened it and read it aloud. To no one. To everyone. To myself. To Amanda. I used to believe you were a star, and I was the sky you outshone. But I've learned stars don't dim each other. They coexist. I celebrate you. And I wish one day you'll celebrate me too. I cried. Not for Amanda, but for the girl who wrote those words, never realizing they were her first step toward truth. That night, I went outside. The sky was wide and dark, scattered with stars. I whispered to no one. I'm here. I matter. I've always mattered. And for the first time, I believed it. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I walked past the community center bulletin board and saw the flyer. Open mic night, share your story. I stood there staring at it, my grocery bag slipping down my wrist. I didn't plan to pick it up. I didn't plan to call the number. And I definitely didn't plan to sign up. But I did. Because something inside me was done whispering. The day of the event, I almost didn't go. I sat in my car outside for nearly 20 minutes, my fingers locked around the steering wheel, heart pounding like I was about to walk into war. Maybe, in a way, I was. When I finally stepped inside, the room was small.
Casual.
Mismatched chairs, twinkle lights, warm laughter. Nothing fancy. But to me, it might as well have been Madison Square Garden. A woman named Lacey ran the sign-up. She asked for my name, then smiled. "Anything you want to talk about is welcome here," she said. Even silence has a sound. That line stuck with me. When they called my name, Melissa Carter, my legs nearly gave out. But I walked. One step, then another, then up onto the little wooden platform. The mic was already warm in my hand from the speaker before me. The room was quiet, not judgmental, just waiting. I took a breath. Then I told them everything. Not in a sob story. Not in vengeance. I told them about family dynamics that make you forget who you are. About being the quiet cousin, the helper, the never a burden. I told them about what it feels like to be rewritten in someone else's story. And I told them how I found the strength to pick up the pen again and write my own chapter. People nodded. One woman cried. When I stepped down, the applause wasn't thunderous. It was gentle, real. Later that night, Lacey came up to me with a notebook in her hand. "You ever think about speaking more?" she asked. "We run workshops. A space for women to reclaim their voices." Something in me cracked open. "I'd love that," I said, and I meant it. Weeks passed. Then months. I started leading small sessions. Then writing essays. One piece got published in a local magazine. Another in an online platform for women reclaiming themselves. I was no longer telling stories just for me. I was helping others find the courage to tell theirs. One day, a message popped into my inbox.
Short.
Hesitant. It was from Amanda. Asterisk, I saw your piece. I didn't know you felt all that. I guess I never asked.
I'm sorry.
Asterisk. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. I didn't reply. Not out of malice, but because I was no longer performing healing for someone else's comfort. I was living it for myself. If you're still here, listening, watching, thank you. I didn't think this story would ever be told, let alone heard. Not because it wasn't important, but because I thought I wasn't. That's what happens when you grow up in a world where your feelings are treated like fine china, beautiful, but best kept locked behind glass. Where you're taught to smile at weddings where your heart is breaking, to laugh at jokes that slice you open quietly, to clap for others while your hands are bleeding from all the holding on. But here's the truth. You are not selfish for wanting to be chosen. You are not dramatic for naming the pain. You are not ungrateful for noticing who never clapped when it was your turn. For a long time, I thought family was something you couldn't question. That love meant loyalty, no matter the cost. That being left out meant trying harder to be let back in. But I've learned something else. Family, real family, is not who demands your silence, but who listens when you finally speak. It's not who shares your blood, but who holds your story with clean hands and open hearts. Maybe Amanda and Denise will never understand what they did. Maybe they'll rewrite it in their minds to soften their shame. That's not my concern anymore. I used to think vindication would feel like a grand finale, like they'd come running back, sobbing apologies and begging me to return. But real healing is quieter than that. It looks like peace in the mirror. It sounds like laughter you don't have to force. It feels like finally coming home to yourself. So to anyone watching who has felt erased in their own family, let this be your permission slip. You're allowed to outgrow the people who raised you. You're allowed to walk away from the table where love was served with conditions. And you're allowed to build a life that fits your soul, not their script. They pretended to love me until I caught them signing me out of the will. And in that moment, I realized maybe I was never in their plans to begin with. But that doesn't matter anymore. Because I'm in mine. And I'm finally living like I belong there. The last time I saw Amanda was at a cousin's baby shower. She walked in late, of course, and greeted everyone like nothing had ever happened. She glanced at me once. No smile. No wave. Just recognition. And in that moment, I felt nothing. Not anger. Not bitterness. Not hope. Just clarity. Because once upon a time, I would have shrunk in her presence, searching her face for signs of affection, some crumb of inclusion.
But now?
I stood tall in my quiet, wore my solitude like silk, and understood that some distances are sacred. Later that day, I walked into the backyard alone. The wind was soft. The air was sweet with lemon cake and cut grass. There was a single chair beneath the sycamore tree, a bit worn but steady. I sat and smiled. There, in that quiet patch of sunlight, I felt something I hadn't in years. Safe. And I thought back to the last will I read, the one they had signed me out of. How poetic it is, really. They tried to erase me with a pen. But in doing so, they wrote me straight into my own story. It's funny. They spent so much time building walls around their inheritance. Guarding the silver, counting the china, debating who got which antique vase. But I inherited something else entirely. I inherited freedom. Freedom from false smiles. Freedom from manufactured love. Freedom from a role I was never meant to play. And in that, I became rich beyond anything they could have left me. Because the greatest legacy isn't in bank accounts or vacation homes. It's in reclaiming your voice, rewriting your narrative, and learning that your worth was never theirs to measure. So let them keep their will. I've got something far more valuable. A future that belongs to me and me alone. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own story, I see you. If you've ever been the quiet one at the table, the one who stayed silent to keep the peace, ask yourself this. Who benefits from your silence? And more importantly, what would happen if you finally took the mic? This isn't just about family. It's about every room you've tiptoed through. Every relationship where you dimmed your light. Every moment you made yourself small so others could feel big. Here's your permission. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't have to earn your seat. And you sure as hell don't have to apologize for finally speaking. Because your story matters. Your voice matters. You matter. So, what's your truth? Drop it in the comments if you're ready. Or just type, I'm still finding my mic. Because that's brave, too.